Welcome back to the International Center for Studies in Creativity Alumni Forum. This is our second forum, and we have 3 people with us today who have been doing good in the world. And as we come back, thank you for coming back. It's always a good sign after the break when you come back.
Don't let them escape.
Yeah, and we have our audience here again, our 635 students in Creativity and Change Leadership. We have 2 other questions, and again, it's loosely, I'll tell you the questions and just as a conversation starter, and then we'll open it up to questions again. As you look at the ways that you've used creativity and what you foresee yourself doing in the future, what would you like to see happen in the future? That's one of the questions. The other one is, in what ways must creativity strengthen society and/or your profession? So where do we see it going? We'll take a kind of a future focus on this.
I think we should start over.
Yeah, we can start at the. You want to start at the other end?
Just choking.
We'll start. Andy, you want to start because she's got to.
Yeah.
I'm choking.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm not sure entirely how creativity might strengthen society in a general sense, but I can talk about what we are trying to do. The thing which interests us the most is the way in which technology might extend the reach for both teaching and collaboration. So, before the break, there was some discussion about creativity in schools and with younger children. And largely by accident, a few months ago, we were asked to start working with a school district in the US that was interested in introducing creative thinking as part of its gifted and talented program. Now, I have to admit, that phrase always makes me laugh, because you think, if one group has been divided into gifted and talented, what's the name for the other group? Is it sort of hopeless, or, it's just how come you... But anyway. So one of the things we'd been working on was the way in which you might use multimedia to teach creative thinking. And as a separate activity, we developed a Introduction to Creative Thinking course. But having taught it for many years, what we decided was, rather than teaching it as a sort of day-long activity, what we wanted to do was divide it up into the smallest possible chunks that we could, and we managed to get most of the content down to nothing more than 10 minutes in little video chunks, and to do this over a period of sort of 3 weeks and be able to work with people online. And one of the things which came from our discussions with the school districts was that we suddenly realized that we had the opportunity to train the teachers, the children, and the parents all in one go. And that's what we've done. And it's been absolutely fascinating, the outcome from this. Now, what we find particularly interesting about it, though, is not so much dealing with a single school district, say in the US, but the adoption of reasonably smart cellular telephones around the world, because surfing the internet on a computer is rapidly becoming the minority way to consume it. Most of the world will consume the internet via their phones for all sorts of perfectly good reasons. And that means that we now have the opportunity to potentially reach out to people anywhere in the world. So what we're interested in doing is to see if we can take the education out via people's mobile phones, via video on their mobile phones, and reach a couple of billion people, which on the face of it sounds like a ludicrous number, but actually after you've done the first million, scaling to a couple of billion is really not that much harder. So if you hold the view that developing the ability to think creatively is a useful and worthwhile thing, and it contributes to the quality of the society, which I firmly hold that belief, and all of the work that we've done around the world supports that belief from my perspective, then we suddenly have an opportunity to dramatically change the way in which we can do education and to teach thinking skills anywhere in the world to anyone for effectively no cost whatsoever, relatively speaking. Now, if you could do that, and if you could do the same, for instance, earlier on, I forget, someone was mentioning the importance of leadership, and we're working in that area tangentially. But to be able to say, we might be able to help everyone in the world develop their creative thinking capability and their ability to lead, both themselves, other people, and potentially to be good followers as well as good leaders, you're at a really odd inflection point in time, in that suddenly education could be available anywhere and to everyone, and the quality of the education, in theory, could be as good as any that you could get in the world, in that you can have the professors from the best universities available directly to you. And this is not something where we have to go and invent something new. Everything we need to do it exists right now. And so, from the point of view of how creativity could strengthen society, that's one thing which absolutely fascinates me. And the other thing about the cellular phone and the internet generally is it stops it from being a broadcast model. It's not from us to the world, it's the world talking to the world. We have a way of now publicising problems and ideas without it needing to go through some sort of central hub. I'll give you just one trivial example of this, which amused me. Just in the last few days, there have been some fairly significant snowstorms in the UK, and by UK definition of a significant snowstorm is more than an inch, which of course makes other people in the world just fall about laughing. But there was a problem in that people, the Met Office wasn't really able to give accurate reports on how deep the snow was because unfortunately the clouds got in the way of its extremely expensive satellite. You would have thought they'd have thought about that one. But there's a service on the internet called Twitter, which is, well, it's sort of like text messaging on your phone, but slightly different. As the snowstorms hit, somebody, and it took them about a day to put this together, built a little Twitter system that if you used your cell phone and you twittered with a particular name and said what your zip code was and how deep you thought the snow was roughly, this person would aggregate all of that and update a Google map in real time. And this was put together in a day and was better than the billion-dollar satellite sitting above the UK. And this is just a trivial example of how people can now collaborate in a completely different way. So the combination of being able to deliver education and collaboration to people, I think will give us a completely different world. I really do. It's quite astonishing.
Well, I'm going to back up from technology to to children. In addition to teaching, I'm the wellness facilitator at Williamsville, and I have learned some incredibly, remarkably sad and astonishing facts about kids and the internet and things that are happening. And it's really not going well. And I think that where I'd like to see creativity go is I'd like to have us unleash our own creativity, find out who and what we are, so that we can better serve these children and help them unleash their creativity. We are putting such reins on them. They are brilliant. Our kids are amazing, amazing people. For that to happen in a day is marvelous. It's out there. They have it. What I think many of us are doing, and hopefully I'm not in that category, is holding them back with the restrictions that we are putting, for lack of a better term, to help us get smarter or better test scores or whatever. We need to understand what creativity is. I'm not sure we're quite there yet. With things like Foresight and things like Curtin's Adapter Innovator, it's such a marvelous tool to say, okay, I'm not better or worse. I'm different. I may be an adapter, I may be an innovator. I may have 5 learning styles, or I may be 5, really good in 5 of Gardner's things. Let them find out what they're good at and let them go with it to get the information that's already out there, and stop putting so many different restrictions on them. So that would be my hope for the future with this, because the consequences of what's happening out there with so many things is increasing exponentially. We had a talk with the person for the Center of Exploited and Missing Children, and it was absolutely frightening. And once again, I think it's because we're not allowing the kids to express their creativity. We're boxing them. And I think we need to take their creativity and channel it into the proper venues and let them go from there so that we're creating more wonderful ways to connect world to world and things of that nature.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think that the biggest thing that we can do is help all people, not just children, how to think. We now have a very large geriatric population, and it's going to continue to grow because there are things that happen that allow us to live longer. And having them to have the ability to think and be creative will give them I think might give them a much stronger and more valuable quality of life versus you get old, you get in a wheelchair, you sip lemonade, and you go in a nursing home or whatever. What alternatives are there? And giving them the opportunity to express those alternatives. This is how I want things to be for myself. I like what you were saying about our children are way off there, and we're still here. And I'll give you an example. No cell phones in schools. Why not? Because we never had cell phones in school, and we don't know how to manage it or the problems that may happen with a person having a cell phone in a school. And instead of thinking of ways that we could make it work, because it's a part of young people's life to have a cell phone, my generation and older have decided, no, you can't have a cell phone. So what happens is they sneak them in school. They're not going to leave their cell phones at home. So why can't we think of ways to make it work, to mesh the transition or the difference instead of this is just the rule because that's the way it was when I went to school and that's the way it was when my child went to school. Let's embrace technology, let's embrace creativity, and let's embrace change. And I think change is the scariest thing for people. Well, not really change, but transition. Because change happens on a particular day. That was one thing I liked about when I was in this class. Being able to tell people it's not the change that you're having a problem with, it's really the transition. And in almost all organizations that I've worked with, that's the part that they skip. They don't want to deal with the transition. They just want people to accept that we've made a change. You no longer can go to the water cooler at 12:15. You have to wait to 12:20. An edit, it's been said, just do it. And that's not how life is. So I like people to kind of just, I guess, be a little less open to different ways of thinking, be a little bit more, not tolerant, acceptive that we all have different ways of doing things. We look at a puzzle from a different viewpoint.